And then I just want to say a quick little prayer. Thank you, Creator, for bringing us all here together today with open minds, open hearts, to really acknowledge and truly be with each other in this time, to learn and be here for one another. Also, Creator, I'd like to ask you to guide those who aren't able to spend today with their fathers and grandfathers today, to help them to see a clearer path, I guess I'll say, and really be there for each other. And once again, to just thank you, Creator, for allowing us to be here for each other. Miigwech. So I guess I can move into a little bit of background, I guess we can say, about Native Americans. Obviously, there's tons and tons of misconceptions about Native Americans and some of their different practices and things like that. So to start a little bit more in on the smudging, for Native folks, smudging is like the answer to everything. You know, you walk into a room, it doesn't feel right, let's smudge it. Meeting at work didn't go well, let's smudge. You're happy, let's smudge. You know, smudging is just like really a go-to to really re-ground ourselves. Obviously, similar to the African American community, the Native American community has gone through some heinous events, going all the way back to the quote-unquote start of this country. And those things have really affected our communities moving forward. Things like the Indian Relocation Act, the boarding schools. So during the era of the boarding schools, what was happening is the U.S. government would come into reservations. They would ask parents, hey, do you have any kids? And it was like, yes, how many? And they would take them and they would place them in schools to, in a sense, really make them not Native, to really dissolve their culture and their teachings. And we, as a community, still see the effects of historical trauma and generational trauma and how that's affected our folks now. As a community, we are trying to be better about talking about these things. And I won't speak for any other community, but I feel like, at least in ours, it's a big, like, if we don't talk about it, it's not there. And the younger generation of folks that are coming in are really trying to break that barrier down. Because there's teachings that we've lost, there's languages that we've lost, there's just people that we've lost and had no connection to. And part of acknowledging all of that can be extremely harmful, but part of that acknowledgement is going to help us heal moving forward. In terms of our communities moving forward, we are starting to see the most amount of language speakers now. Our youth in our communities are really trying to go back to those roots of what elders are left. Right now, I believe in the state of Michigan, there are 3 fluent Anishinaabe speakers, so our native language. Each one of the tribes here in Michigan does a very, very good job of reiterating the importance of our culture, but also that acknowledgement. So here in the state of Michigan, there are 12 federally recognized tribes. There are some states. What that means is the U.S. government acknowledges that we are people enough to be counted as a tribe. A big thing as Native folks that we're also healing and trying to move past is the use of blood quantum. right now in the whole entire world, Native Americans are the only people who have to carry a card that says that they are Native American. And it has really caused a lot of tension amongst individuals in tribes, because it's like, oh, well, what you say doesn't matter because you're only, 3/12 or, 1/64th and things like that. And it's really harmed our ability as communities to heal, because we put up these walls around us, because it's like, who can we share our teachings with? Who can we share our culture with? And for a long time, Native Americans lost the right to practice their teachings, their culture. Like this right now, for us to do this in this church has only been legal for 45 years. And that was put into place by the Indian Religious Freedom Act in 1978. To me, that really hurts me sometimes, because that's as old as my mom. So she was fortunate enough to be born when she was, that she was able to practice her teachings. But people like my grandmother, who was a victim of the Indian Relocation Act, was not able to practice this legally for about 20 years of her life, 30 years of her life. But we are, like I said, we are starting to see strides of our communities healing and coming back together. For those of you who don't know, also, it was in the news a couple days ago, but the Supreme Court did also rule that ICWA, which is the Indian Child Welfare Act, was in fact constitutional 7-2. And what the Indian Child Welfare Act is if there's a situation where Native children have to be removed from their homes, that they will be placed with other family members, Native family members, and if not Native family members, then other Native individuals. Because what was happening is, once again, social services would come in, the state would come in, and obviously there's some conditions where children just don't thrive. But what was happening is they were leaving their communities and being adopted by white families, African American families, Asian families, really whoever would take them and take care of them. And that was great, but it was just also that loss of themselves and their identity, and their issue and their trouble of reconnecting with the community. Man, sorry. I'm like, all of this is like, I'm like all sad up here now. Sorry. Sometimes I still get really like, yeah. Well, no, I don't, I get to a point where it's upsetting and I get angry. But yeah, so these are things that we as a community have been dealing with, but it's not exclusive to our communities, and that is a big thing that I like to talk about when I do talk about this. It's not something new. It's not like we've never seen this before. These things have happened also in the African American community. I mean, this happened to the Asian American communities during World War II. The constant, on edgeness of, am I going to lose my rights as a person? And I consider myself to be very lucky to be born and be alive in a time that I am now. Because to be honest with you, if I was born back then, I don't know where I would be, or who I would be, because it was clear that we weren't good enough to have our teachings and things like that, and it's really upsetting. I'm really excited and here for the decolonizing of a lot of things. Like Stancy mentioned, that she's going to have a doula coming in and talking. Here in the state of Michigan, we do have I believe it's a Michigan Midwife Doula Association. But specifically, we have one that is all Native and Indigenous women who travel throughout the state and across what we call Indian country and assist other Native mothers who are getting ready to bring their children into the world. And it's like, for me, that's such a cool thing to think about, because it's like I would have never even imagined that something like that would exist. Places like our agency, where people of all tribes, all nations can come and meet in one place and have the opportunities to have sweat lodges, practice, their teachings, their languages. So moving into a little bit of some of our teachings as Native people, a lot of us tend to follow what we call the 7 grandfather teachings or grandmother teachings. And these teachings are based upon humility, truth, respect, courage, bravery, those kind of staples in our community. And those are really our go-tos for a lot of things. And sometimes things can seem extremely complicated and you don't know the answer to it and you can't figure it out. And there's been multiple times where I've just stopped and went back to my initial teachings, and it's like, okay, take a breath. Where are we at with this? Well, I'm having this issue with truth. Okay. And being able to really work through with our community has done a lot for myself. And really any chance that I can get to come out and share any little bit of information that I can about our community is truly a privilege and an honor, and I'm really grateful that you guys have let me ramble. I keep mentioning our center. Also, please know that our center is welcome and open to anyone who would like to come and learn and be a part of our community gatherings, our community events, our teachings. After we're all finished up, if you want a little bit more information on that, I've got a few cards. Did anyone have any questions? Yeah. Yeah, so I am fortunate enough that I am able to vote. Yeah, okay, sorry. So the question was, am I able to vote in terms of like us as Native people? And the answer is yes. We are all technically citizens of the United States, so we all can vote. In terms of the tribes too, most, if not all, tribes are sovereign nations as well, meaning that they all have their own judicial system, their own just political system, so they all have their own things that those members are able to vote on, so like their chairmans, their councilmen, and all of that as well.
You mentioned there are 12 tribes.
Yeah.
Where are they located and what is the population of these tribes?
Yeah, so the question was, where are the 12 tribes here in Michigan located and what do their populations look like? So they're kind of spread out throughout the UP in the lower west half of the state. So the closest one to here would probably be the Saginaw-Chippewa tribe in Mount Pleasant. I don't know if anyone travels to casinos or takes senior trips, but Soaring Eagle Casino, that's owned by the Saginaw-Chippewa tribe. Right now, I believe they have maybe anywhere from 5,000 to maybe 6,000 enrolled members. So our the federally recognized tribes here are the Saginaw-Chippewa tribe in Mount Pleasant, the Nottawasepi Band of Huron-Potawatomi in Battle Creek, the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi in Dowagiac. Let me make my way up. Uh, the Little River Band of Odawa Indians, they're in Manistee. The Little Traverse Bay Band, which they are in Harbor Springs, Petoskey area. There's the Grand Traverse Bay Band, which is in the Traverse City area. The Sioux Tribe, which is in Sault Ste. Marie. Hannahville Indian Community, which is about 30 minutes west of Escanaba in the UP. The Keweenaw Bay Indian Community, which is a nice 14-hour drive all the way up to the UP. And then there is LVD, which is in like right on the border of like Michigan and Wisconsin. I don't think I forgot anyone, and I'm really sorry if I did. But those are kind of like the general areas. So you can see, kind of looking at a map, a lot of our tribes have kind of migrated either north or west. This was obviously also around the time of when cities were starting to be built. In Detroit being one of the oldest cities in Michigan, also a lot of the tribes started moving further and further away. Another thing also in terms of natives, I don't know if anyone was going to ask this or not, but a new survey came out from the Urban Indian Health Institute, and they actually said that 85% of Native Americans live off of a reservation and in urban areas. So for here in Michigan, places like Detroit, Grand Rapids, Traverse City, those are our big like hot spots for Native Americans. I think according to the census, they said that there's about 50,000 Native Americans here in the greater Detroit area, which is kind of crazy to think about because you're like, where are you? You know, when I think about like our events and our community gatherings, I'm like, where are all 50,000 of you right now? Did anyone have any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, so, well, here, I can actually show you. Yeah, so the question is, what is the card that we carry around really have to do? Like, what is the purpose of it? So it all depends. So this is what mine looks like because I haven't had a chance to go back and get mine renewed. Nothing truly happens if you don't have this card. However, this card is used as a form of government ID. So places like stores, TSA, Secretary of State, they all have to accept this as a form of government-issued ID. And yeah, like I said, sometimes looking at this card can be a little corny, if I'll say, to really think about the fact that in the government's eyes, this card is what defines me as being Native American. Most places, they also will put your picture on it. So it looks like a library card or a school ID. But yeah, that's pretty much what there's no consequence for not having this card. I will say it is nice sometimes. I can get into a lot of the tribal community centers, like their teaching centers for free, which I guess is a plus, but yeah, so that's kind of the purpose and kind of what goes along with that.
Can you give an ID other than that?
Yeah, so the follow-up question was, can I have another ID besides this one? Yep, so I also do have my horrendous picture, but my Michigan State driver's license. It's funny, these pictures always make you look like you're 10 pounds bigger also. It never fails. But yes, and then in terms of having a U.S. passport as well, I can get that with my state ID and with my tribal ID as well. My tribal ID also allows me to cross the American and the Canadian border without a passport or an enhanced license. Because I am a tribal member, they have to let me across and back. I know you had your hand up back there.
How did they decide what Indians would be allowed to own casinos?
I'm sorry, repeat that one.
How did they decide what Indians would be allowed to own casinos?
Okay, so the question is, how do they decide which Indians are allowed to own casinos? In terms of owning casinos and tribal land, part of it, they have to go through the National Gaming Association, just like any other entity who would want to open up gaming services. So they apply, they put in their application and say, this is where we want to put the casino, this is why we want to put the casino, this is how we intend to pay to build it, and this is what we intend to use the revenue for. And then it's up to the National Gaming Association, which is in DC, to decide whether they can build a casino or not. Yeah.
I'd like to know if Native Americans have any land that belongs to them now and that has been co-opted by the government.
Yeah, so the question is there any land that natives have now that was, that they own, that was kind of given back? Is that? Yeah. So yeah, we're actually starting to see this is a big thing now, part of the land back movement. So that there's actually universities here in Michigan that are actually working to help some tribal communities get land back that was designated as like university property. So Michigan State University, University of Michigan, a lot of their like fishing and like wildlife areas, they're starting to give back while also still making the caveat of like, yes, you can have your land back. Can we please still use it though for our students? Which in a lot of tribes are like, you know, obviously we're here and want to educate our future generations. So yes, you can still use our land for those things as well. The more unfortunate way that I've also started seeing it is tribes are starting to buy their land back, which is crazy to me, that it's like, this is yours, I'm gonna take it. Can I have it back? Yes, for a price.
Yeah.
And the tribes have just been like, you know what? Here, give us our tribal land back, give us our community land, like just give it back. Here's your money that you want. Yeah. And I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has one.
Any others?
I'm just,
Not sure if this is working.
oh, thank you.
Really loud, close to your mic.
I'm just a little curious if a tribe member marries outside of the tribe, does the child has to be a certain percentage in order to be a part of the tribal? I guess I'm trying to say that correctly.
Yeah. So asking, so if a tribal member marries a non-tribal member, how does that child become native or enrolled? Yes, the answer is yes. A lot of tribal communities have different regulations for how they are being enrolled. Some are starting to move away from the blood quantum way. So where if mom or dad or both are enrolled, then that child can be enrolled. A lot of tribes now are also starting to go, are still following blood quantum. So basically anything after, I believe it's 12.5%, so an eighth, they can't be enrolled members. They can become descendants of the tribe, but they can't be physically enrolled in the tribe. And some also take like grandfathering clauses. So like my tribe, we have what's called the Baker rolls. And the Baker rolls are the names of all of the original members of our tribe. And as people are enrolled, they're added onto these rolls. So they're like pages and pages. But if you can show your connection to someone on the rolls, then you're able to be enrolled or become a descendant. But yeah, so thank you.
One question.
Oh,
Yes, one additional just statement. That was going to be my question. I am part of the Muskogee tribe, which is part of the Cherokee Nation, and I'm 25%, so I guess I am eligible to enroll in, I don't know which tribe, because my grandmother was located in Alabama. I'm not sure for certain if I can enroll in a tribal community here in Michigan.
yeah, I don't know in terms of necessarily Michigan, but definitely I encourage you to take a look and see if there's any documents, anything anywhere. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to Muskogee Creek in Oklahoma or Cherokee Nation. They also have their own roles as well, so that they can, if you can provide them lineage, you never know. But yes, thank you guys so much for allowing me to come back again and share.
My mouth is big enough, you guys can hear me, right?
No, use the mic.
Obedience. Thank you so very much. Thank you. He was great last year, and this year he's even better. I've learned so much, and history is so aligned with my history. I am only 1/8 Native American, and a lot of those records were burned, so we don't know and can't prove it, but just to know that you guys, we are growing, and there's a passion there. Keep it up, and we support you. You are so welcome. Give him another hand. And you can always use your smudge pot with me. Our doula is a little late. However, we do have Dr. Jean Derricott Murphy here that will be speaking to us from the, why are you looking at me like, from the African tradition, and I'd like for you to receive her, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you. And I must tell you, when Stancy asked me to be part of a healing service, my question is, what? What do you mean by a healing service? What do we have to do? And so she gave me her ideas of what she thought I should talk about. And Spirit said, And so, first of all, I want to thank you, Adon, because you said so much of what I have here, which shows just how close our struggles are and how close our histories are as people in the United States. So if some of it overlaps a little bit, that's because it does, it overlaps. And so the first thing I want to do is say that African Americans in this country have many different ways to heal. And so for me to try to gather all that together in one thing is almost impossible. So what I have come to do is I'm going to tell you how I have sought for a a spiritual healing as an African American woman in America. And one of the ways that has worked for me is to begin to reclaim who I am, as opposed to who we've been told we are, and as opposed to understanding being an African American woman in America based on America's idea of who I am. And so I am reclaiming, I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these African outfits and I'm going, yes! Because one of the things that has worked for me is to reclaim all of my Africanities where they are. And so I've beginning to shed some of the Western ideas of beauty. Now understand, there's nothing wrong with the Western idea of beauty, but it no longer works for me. And that's how my healing has come about. And one of the things I'd like to do, thank you for teaching me about the smudging, because I've got it at home. I'm going, what do I do with this? Now I know. But something else that we do, and we think about our ancestors. We remember, and I'm learning more and more about how African religions work. And they're not demonic, which is what we were told that they were. And people kept trying to instill in us that your worship must be a certain way. Well, I like what Adon did. We have many different ways to worship the Creator. One thing I'd like to do as we get started is welcome into this space our ancestors. All of us have ancestors. My pastor, who is sitting over in the corner, likes to sometimes tell us that they are sitting in the balconies of heaven watching what we do. But I'd like to welcome them into this space. Some of you are familiar with pouring libations. And as one who practices a Christian faith, there are some people in my faith practice who would say, oh, no, you can't do that. No. Why not? They pour libations in Scripture. I won't point you to it. I'm going to let you do the work yourself. Because sometimes you need to do the work in order to know what it is, because if I give it to you, it's too easy. So what I'm going to do is use this live plant, which represents life, and I'm going to, we don't have time to sit around and ask everybody to welcome their individual ancestors into the room, but if we had a smaller group, what I would do is introduce myself as I am Jean Derricott Murphy, the daughter of Barbara Epps Derricott and Roger P. Derricott, the granddaughter of Hattie Pearl Epps and Octavia Derricott, and the great-great-granddaughter of an enslaved ancestor whose name I happen to find on Ancestry.com, believe it or not. And so I've taken my family tree back 5 generations on this soil, and her name was Delphia. So what I'm going to ask you all to do, all in one group, as I begin to pour this, first of all, I will pour libation and welcome the Creator, the Holy Spirit, or however you call the one you worship. We'll welcome that Spirit into this space. So I welcome Holy Spirit. You can talk. I expect to hear you. And then I'm going to welcome into this space my ancestors whose names I just called. But as I pour this, please call out the names of your ancestors. And now, not only do we sit in this space, but we've welcomed our ancestors to be here with us. Something that I have learned as I've studied more and more about indigenous African religions is that the spirits still have life. Our ancestors are still with us. And as we talk about healing, we think about healing ourselves, but we don't think about offering a space for the healing of our ancestors. I say that because as we here celebrate Juneteenth, we're celebrating freedom, Freedom Day, freedom for everybody. Yeah, we think sometimes it is an African American holiday. Well, yes, but yes and. And the yes and is everybody is searching for freedom. Some of our ancestors passed on to the next realm without ever seeing the freedom that they searched for. So their spirits are still seeking healing. So as they sit in this space with us, because we've invited them in, we will also affect healing for them. So what we find ourselves doing in this space is praying for healing for the past, healing for the present, and healing to go into the future. So we thank you for doing that. Now, something else that has worked for me is beginning to understand more and more about African culture. Now, unfortunately, even though I have been told that my grandmother was 1/4 Creek, I don't have any proof other than the family histories that were passed down. So I cannot find myself on the rolls of a tribe, but that's okay, because I still know who I am. But the one part of me that I'm going to gravitate to even more is that African American piece, that African connection to who I am. So you know I had to do a DNA test, right? And I did not use Ancestry. Instead, I used another one. It's actually called African Ancestry because it traces back to the tribe, in my case, to the tribe where my maternal roots come from. Okay, I thought it was going to say one thing. It came back with something altogether different. But I found out that my mother's people, however far back they go, come from Cameroon and the Tikar tribe. I know nothing about the Tikar tribe, but that's going to give me something that I need to find out about in order to understand my African roots. But I have a friend who's from Ghana, and she keeps looking at me and she says, "I think you must be my cousin." And so she has accepted me into the Ashanti people. And so now I guess I'm Cameroonian and Ashanti, so I will accept that from Ghana. And one of the things that works for me in searching for my own healing as a person in America is stepping my feet on the soil of Africa. We can't all go. But if you can't go, and if you are of African American descent, I suggest you find a movie, not by someone who's not African. Go all the research you can do to feel like you're there. But one of the first things that we saw when we got to Ghana in the airport was this big sign that said, Akwaba. Akwaba. Akwaba is the word in Twi, which is a language of the Asante people, which says, welcome. Welcome home. So I say to every one of you here today, Akwaba. Whether you can pronounce it or not, doesn't matter, but turn to somebody and just welcome them in the Twi language, Akwaba. So now we're all welcome. We all feel good and welcome. So now we're participating in this healing service. Why are we participating in a healing service? Because we need to be healed. We walk around thinking we're well. We walk around thinking things are good, but we live in a nation that needs to be healed. And in the research that I'm doing, I have come to understand, for me, that healing comes through history. Yes, the history that certain people are trying to ban, certain people are trying to say you don't need to know it. As a matter of fact, we just made it an outlaw. You can't even teach it. Well, I wonder why they're doing that. When you block the history, you prevent the healing. So I want to use a metaphor about how I'm thinking this country is right now. We're in the hospital. The nation is on life support. If you don't know anything about being sick enough to be on life support, they hook you up with everything. You're hooked up here, you're hooked up there because someone is trying to infuse life into your body so you remain alive. This nation is on life support. I contend that the only way it can be healed is through the history. Not everyone will agree with me, but that's where I stay. And so it's like having a cancer. How is a cancer removed? Say it again. You cut it out. There has to be a surgery or chemo if you're lucky that you can't do the surgery, but something has to happen to remove the cancer from the body. This nation has a wound that has never healed. Adon talked about the wound that has been inflicted upon First Nations people. I'm standing here and I can talk about the wounds that have been inflicted upon Africans brought to this nation against their will. There are many other ethnic groups who have been mistreated in this nation because this nation somehow doesn't see those who they consider others as human enough to be treated as humans. So for me, that's the wound that this nation must heal from. How are we going to heal from it? Not by covering it over. What happens when you cover over a sore that really is still infected? It festers. And when it festers, what happens? It gets worse. And it gets worse. And unless you deal with that wound, it may even cause you to have an amputation. We don't like to think in those terms, but I use the medical metaphor because it works for where we find ourselves, how we find ourselves there. So we all have to begin to act as though we are the surgeons. And we have a tool in our medicine kit that will help heal the nation. And that tool is truth. Just simple truth. In a time of lies after lie, after lie, after lie, it's sometimes hard to even know what the truth is. But we have it in front of us. It has been printed, it has been taught. We have the truth, so now we have to get our scalpels out and start doing the type of surgery that is necessary in this nation. And our history is painful. We have to admit that. There are those who, what should I call them? I'm going to call them the super patriotic, who see nothing wrong with how things are or how things were. And we're always going to have them. But we also have folk like us who are in this room who recognize that there are some other things that have to happen, and so we have to become the surgeons. And we have to be the ones to recognize that if healing is going to happen, if the marginalized communities that this nation has kept in the background for so long are going to find a place of, what is that, liberty and justice for all? Okay. Then there are some things that we have to do. See, I think there's a problem with either forgetting or ignoring or overlooking or rewriting history. And the problem with that is when it doesn't get told, when people want to stand in their own set of truths, which are not really truths, then the healing can't come. It's like, when you know you've got something wrong and you keep saying, oh, I'll deal with it later, I'll and that pain just keeps coming, and you just keep overlooking it. And eventually you've overlooked it so much that it's going to require major, major, major medical attention. Well, that's what some of these people are doing in my mind. That's how I figure it out. They keep overlooking it. Well, they're not actually overlooking it. They're actually trying to deny it. So when I denied that pain that just wouldn't go away, then I had a few extra weeks of healing that I wouldn't have had to have if I had gone and dealt with it in the first place. So for me, it's simple. Just deal with it. Stop trying to act as though this history never happened. It did. We know that it did because we have a whole group of Native people who can no longer have their own lands, whose languages, oh, wait a minute, are we talking about African in America or just Native? Oh, I'm sorry. It's kind of both of us. We've lost our original languages. Well, did we lose them or were they stolen? Okay. We've lost our original ways of spirituality. Lost or we've lost our languages. Now, Adon, I loved hearing you say that there are some places where the languages are coming back because they weren't lost completely. But nobody I know can reach back and get the language that our first African ancestor spoke when they were forcibly brought to this land. My original language is lost. I cannot get it back. That's why I love saying Akwaba. It's pretty much the closest I can come right now until I learn some more words. But those things for us are lost. But there's another side to that. Some of our people who have gone through these traumatic experiences no longer want to remember because it's too painful. And so they have covered over the pain of the mistreatment that has taken place in this land. That's as much a cancer that needs to be addressed as the flip side, which says we don't want to talk about it. Because when you don't deal with it, whether you were the perpetrator or the one who it was perpetrated against, it still has a chance to metastasize and find itself in a way that it's hard to deal with. Forgetting history is not a good place to find ourselves. So in our culture, we found that there are people who chose not to remember because it is or was so painful. So stories that my grandparents brought with them from the South to the North, I don't know. Why don't I know them? They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to talk about it because it was too painful. Sometimes they said they didn't want to talk about it because they thought they were protecting the generations to come behind them. What I'm finding is that that pain that they felt, though it has not been talked about or addressed, has been passed down. The trauma has been passed down and not dealt with because we don't even know what the trauma was. So the forgetting is not good. And so I've come down to having what I call rituals of restorative resistance. Adon did a ritual for us. Now, if we had a lot of time, I'd stand here and we'd do these things, but we don't have that time. So we're going to go through these pretty quickly. And these rituals this can be done as individual, it can be done as groups, but there are 9 words that I want to play with a little bit so that you understand how these rituals of restorative resistance. Think about ritual, something that we do. It's a ceremony. It's what we do. We're doing a ritual now. Restorative, to refresh, to heal. Resistance. We're resisting those things that have come against us as a people and a nation. So ritual, restorative, resistance, all in one fell swoop. So these don't have to be done in any particular order, but the first one I say is ruminate. What? Ruminate? It just means to think about. To sit down, think about where we are now, how we got here, and where we want to go. You can do that on your own, or you can do it with a bunch of people. Sit down and talk about the history. Don't let the history go away. The second one is remember. Sometimes remembering is difficult. Sometimes remembering is painful, but if we don't remember, we're bound to repeat the mistakes that we already did. And then reclaim, take it back. Take it back. If I was told, and I'm thankful for the Crown Act, yes, I am. Because if I was told that my hair was a certain way and they didn't like it, because it didn't match a Western understanding of what hair should look like, though it doesn't grow out of my head that way, this is a reclamation. Going to a natural hairstyle for me is a reclamation. Wearing African clothing for me is I'm regaining and reclaiming who I am by how I dress and act. And then repudiate. What? Repudiate. Say, no, that is not it. We're not taking it. We're not doing it. I am rejecting all of the negative things that you've said about me and my people. No, not going to happen. And then we resist. We sitting in this room right now are resisting. We are a core of people who are resisting what the status quo has said. And, look around. So many places in Michigan today are doing some kind of Juneteenth celebration. This is a good thing because we're resisting the narrative that the dominant culture has given us for so many years. And then reframe it. Do it a different way. Reframe it. I'm reframing how my beauty is for me. I'm reframing that the Western idea of beauty doesn't work for me. I'm not telling anybody else what to do, but you have to reframe it for yourself. Reframe. What is it going to do? And then restore. Bring it back. For me, restoration is this cute little African outfit, this little short African do. I'm restoring myself to myself, knowing that all of my Africanity is who I am. And then refresh yourself. Take a moment. Think back to where you've been, where you're going, how you got there, what you need to do, and just do. Because the battle is still here. We still have to fight. But you have to refresh yourself in the battle. And the last thing I have is reconnect. This room is full of people who are connecting and reconnecting with each other because we recognize that all of these other things that we talked about, everything Adon talked about, we have to connect with one another in order for the work to be done. And so I thank you for listening. If we had time, we'd do something else, but we don't. I see her telling me to wind it down. So I have shared with you how I found healing for myself. Each of us has to find healing for ourselves. And then once we are healed, then we can help others heal. Thank you.
Are there any questions before we go to our next person? I'm trying to be conscious of your time. We said from 3 to 4:30, and we were kind of running out of time. Pardon me? We were late starting. I've allowed for that. Any questions? No questions? Oh, okay. That was wonderful. We thank you, Dr. Murphy. We thank you. There's so much to be learned, and there's such an overlap. And it's not an accusation against anyone. In this, we should all be looking at ourselves and where we stand in the midst of all of this. Which one of these people is you? It's just that simple. You know, who are you? And are you able to identify with that so that you leave from here healed, or at least the healing process starting? All right? So now our doula is here by the name of Princess Umi. And you can come on up. We had a mix-up in dates, but she's here. And, you know, when I look at them and I think about it, it's like the culture has just truly crossed and blended, and here we are. You know, Princess looks like she could be the cousin to Adon. So we thank her, and you'll be able to ask questions afterwards. And if you have questions of Dr. Murphy, I want to tell you just a little bit about my friend, Dr. Murphy. She sent me her bio, but she is truly a learned person in the African culture. And she is not one of those fake doctors, she's one of those PhD doctors. And I like to stress that because sometimes we don't give credit where it's due. She's worked hard to garner the information that she has, and she tries to teach it in a very non-threatening way, but certainly one that should be accepted by all so that we can grow. And I thank her for that. Princess, you're on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Doctor. That was beautiful, and thank you for the lovely introduction. Hi, everybody. Hi. So as stated, I am a doula. Is anybody familiar with doulas? Yes? Yes, you are. Oh, I love that. Just, 5-10 years ago, nobody knew, so that's amazing. So today, in honor of Juneteenth, I want to speak not just about doulas, but I want to speak especially to the culture that I come from as a young Black woman and of our journey here. So before I even get into the culture or the history, I have a question for you all. I was wondering, do any of you know what starts labor? Yeah. Okay, the rupture of waters. Okay, but what signals to the body to do that? Hopefully not that. What was that? The loss of the plug. Okay. Okay, so I'm hearing the loss of the plug, the release of the water. One more. Baby pushing. Oh, we're getting really warm right there. What was it? Contractions. Yes, this is all a part of the beginning of labor. And what initiates all of these bodily processes is the love of the baby saying, I'm ready. Each and every one of you who's in this world today, which I can see that you are, you're here. In order for you to be here, you had to say, I'm ready. I want to be in the world. You begged with excitement to be here. So what does that look like? Like from a anatomy, physiology way, right? Like, okay, that sounds really poetic, but it's true. So the baby, when the baby is ready, is full of this feeling of love, of excitement. And it translates to mom's brain and signals for her to produce oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. Oxytocin is what you feel when you look into the eyes of a loved one, when you're in their arms, when you feel so loved and so embraced and so safe in the world. That is the hormone that begins the contractions. That is the hormone that continues the contractions. So baby says, oh, I want to be in the world. And mom's brain says, oh, I can't wait to hold you in my arms. I want you here. This is happening on a chemical level in the body. So this is true for every single one of you. All of you wanted to be here. And every one of you's mothers wanted to hold you in their arms. That's the very beginning of life. So sweet, right? So what continues the labor process? Because mom might not be aware. Honestly, she might not be in the mood. She might not be aware that this is what's happening on a physiological level. She might be sleeping. She might be doing other things. She might be eating. She might the opposite of that. So a lot of things are happening on the external, but inside, on a physiological level, this is what's occurring. So as labor progresses, contractions continue, and it's hugging the baby into the world and releasing, hugging and releasing. And then they become a little bit more steady, like a pulse. And then it's a little stronger, and then we get a kick of adrenaline. And right when we get that kick of adrenaline, of excitement, that's when mom taps into this primal energy and bears down and brings you with effort into the world, right? And she's able to get through all of that with that love that's coursing through her body. That's how we were designed, so beautifully. That oxytocin that creates those contractions also creates endorphins in the body. So it goes to the brain, to the uterus, to the brain, to the uterus, in a continual loop. Every time it goes to the brain, it releases endorphins, like when you have a runner's high, which helps something that is so physically difficult becomes just barely manageable. Whoever created us had that in mind, right? Now, the reason why I share this is because a lot of people are not aware of what the natural process is. A lot of people only know it as an emergency, of rushing to the hospital. But imagine if what's keeping this going is a flow of love and a feeling of safety. If that gets disrupted by panic, what does that do? Oh no, right? Oh my gosh. Does that feel like we can open, we can come to this world? Not necessarily. So it can create a slowdown of labor. It can create complications. So it's important to have an understanding of the natural process so that you have something to compare it to. So if somebody is in your midst and they're going into labor, maybe you are panicking because you're not qualified. But just keeping in mind that what's going to be most helpful to them is to be calm, not ask too many questions, offer water. Go slowly find out who's supposed to be on the way. Is it a midwife coming? Is it a home birth? Is it a planned hospital birth? Okay, that's totally fine, right? That's totally fine. Apply comfort, physical comfort, because what they're experiencing is big. They're bringing a whole life into this world. And so that's where doulas come in. Because doulas are trained to understand the hormones, the anatomy, the stages of labor. We can see what stage the person is in. We understand how to interact with this person as they're going through this. And we can be there before, while they're pregnant, to educate them so they're not startled, they're empowered. We're also able to be there for them at the hospital or at their home birth or at the birth center so that they have a companion there helping them to feel safe, keeping that process going all the way until they're ready to tap into their power, their own power, and bear down and bring life. And then even after, as these feelings flood them of the fact that, oh my God, look what I did. That moment, we hold space for that, we honor that, and we protect that. Now, I mentioned the protecting aspect because as a descendant of Black women in this country, we've discussed that there is a wound, right? That Black people are not always seen as human, which sounds funny, and it took a while for me to even understand. Why are people treating, I don't understand. So, oh, they don't think that we're human. I was like, that is a interesting phenomenon, but if you look at the hospitals, you will see that often when the women are expressing their needs, when Black women are saying, this feels off, this feels uncomfortable, this has me concerned, I need this, I need that. Those are things that should be listened to, right? Because who knows better than the person who is experiencing this? But often in the hospitals, their unconscious biases will come out and they'll say, oh, she's being so difficult. Oh, that, all these labels, right? Black women are, all of these labels that get used and put to the side. And then a lot of those women sometimes don't make it. And it's really sad and it's really real. And we're losing Black women unnecessarily because the process itself is so beautiful, and all we have to do is listen. All we have to do is honor them. We are not there to fight them. We are not there to debate. We are not there to shame. We are there to honor and to protect and to love. And I'll go as far to say as to praise, because we are witnessing God in action. That person is going into wherever babies come from. If you believe in heaven, if you believe in the ancestral realm, they are going somewhere and retrieving a soul and bringing them here. And that is something to honor. And so as a doula, as a Black doula, I take that job very seriously. I show up for my clients during their pregnancy and I answer any questions that they have. And nothing is too silly. Oh, but my big toe feels swollen on this side. Okay, let's talk about it. I have all the time in the world for you. Oh, I had the baby and the baby's not latching. All right, well, let me come over and let's adjust. Let's figure it out together. You're not alone. I honor you. I honor your process. And so that's something that doulas do. Black doulas especially will find themselves having to advocate in the hospital spaces, advocate for the providers to see our clients as human. We have to sometimes say, she's human. She needs compassion. She needs a moment to pray. I know you're at work, but this is a life-changing moment for her. And sometimes we have to actively tap into the humanity of others so that they can see the humanity in our clients. So as I am up here in this space, I'm also asking that we can be more conscious of any time that we are interacting with somebody as though they are less than human, and what that dehumanization can do in any space. And remembering that all of us, each and every one of us, before we were born, we wanted to be here. We were excited. We were full of love. We said, oh, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait. I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. That's what we were doing. And Mom said, oh my God, I can't wait to feel you in my arms. I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to look into your eyes. So I just want to pause for a moment and ask if everybody can, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. If you feel comfortable, get into a relaxed position. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel your jaw soften. Go ahead and breathe deep into your belly and release. And I invite you to imagine yourself in the womb of your mother. And remember, how excited were you to be here? What did you feel in your little body? What are you excited to experience? What does it feel like to be safe and held and loved unconditionally? To have all of your needs met and to know that you belong in this world. I invite you to remember why you wanted to be in this world. What is your inspiration? Who are you here to be? Now I'll give a moment for you to just feel this and be with yourself in the womb of your mother, remembering that you belong, that you are beautiful, that you are perfectly made, that you have a purpose in this world that only you can fulfill, and that there are people here on earth who want you here, who will protect you, who will love you, who will listen when you need to be heard, who will support your dreams. We are waiting for you, and we are so, so happy to know that you are on the way. Now, whenever it feels good to you, you can stay here in this moment and just feel it, breathe. And whenever you feel ready, I invite you to come back to us, remembering full and well why you came here, why you want to be here, what your mission is. And I can tell you, as a doula who works with traditional midwives who attend home births, this is something that is sacred to our line of work. This is how all children deserve to be welcomed into the world. You deserve this feeling that you're experiencing right now. You deserved it when you first got to the world. You deserve it every morning you wake up, and all the way until you complete your life. This is your birthright. If you are curious and you have any questions about how you can support and ensure that all of our babies, all of our birthing people are afforded the opportunity to have this experience, I would love to provide any resources, any support. And again, from the history perspective, just remember before birth moved to the hospital, it was the traditional home birth black midwives, the grand midwives, the granny midwives, who attended all of the births, and they had this incredible wisdom. And we can't lose it. It's too good. It's too good. So thank you so much for participating with that. And my prayer and my hope is that we can lay that as the new normal. We can reclaim that, because that is how we heal as a people. Thank you.
Any questions? Hold on, she's bringing the mic.
Are your services covered by any insurances?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was something that we worked on, and as of January 2023, we are able to accept insurances, including Medicaid. And I would like to make clear the distinction between midwives and doulas. So midwives are the care providers, and at this time, we are still working on getting them covered for insurance. But doulas, we are able to show up for you in the hospital space. We are also able to show up for you at the home birth and everything in between. We're there for comfort.
Any other questions? Wow, you guys got quiet with each person. Thank you so much, Princess.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sure.
You know, recently there's been a lot of press and information about Black women and the high rate of death for those experiencing childbirth. What do you attribute that to?
Thank you for that question. Those numbers tend to correlate with hospital births as opposed to home births, which is interesting. Black women are thriving at home. Our home birth midwives are taking great care of us. Our doulas are loving on us. We're getting the information we need to have good nutrition because we're getting hour-long visits with our midwives throughout the pregnancy. We're being believed. We're being listened to. We're given the freedom to move as we need to move. If something doesn't feel right, we're believed right away. I think in the hospitals, it's very profit-driven often. So the prenatal visits, you get 15 minutes with your provider. It's really, really quick. As a person of color, especially Black women, they tend to get dismissed a lot easier. I was like, oh my gosh, she's just being extra right now. So things that could have been caught are missed. And it doesn't matter how much money you have or how healthy you are, because even, was it Serena Williams, who is, and Beyonce, like even our Black celebrities who are healthy, in shape, have money, proper education, whatever, they are still dismissed in spaces where people have these unconscious biases that show up in how they care or don't care. There are actual cases where the women have died during labor, and the partners are like, but she was telling you something was wrong. We said it, we kept saying it, we were concerned, she was bleeding, you know. And at the time they were saying it, whoever was on staff was like, I got enough to do, okay? Like the staff at the hospitals tend to be overwhelmed and overworked and understaffed, and it's very profit-driven because the hospitals have this like profit margin, and if they lose a couple people here and there, it's not affecting them the way that at home many of the midwives develop a relationship. So losing this person isn't just write it off on the books. It's like, no, this is somebody. This is somebody coming to the world. And so I think the emotional and the spiritual aspects of labor and birth tend to be honored at home by midwives and sometimes are honored in the hospital. Because you do have some amazing providers in the hospital who do honor and care for and tear. So it's not really, there's some nuance there. But if we're looking at the numbers, we can say that sometimes in the hospital, because it's so busy and they're, you know, doing all these things, there's also more interventions in the hospital because they have to please, or I don't know what the word is, but they're trying to make their insurance companies happy. So yeah, so they're like, oh look, we did all the things, right? Like you can't sue us, we did all these things. And the insurance company doesn't understand that, well, like, yeah, as soon as you start Pitocin, which is the artificial version of oxytocin, now these contractions are harder, and now you're putting the baby in fetal distress. Or now you made it so hard she needs an epidural. And now that she had an epidural, labor slowed. And now that you did this is creating a whole cascade of issues, and each intervention comes with its own risk. So those are things to consider. So we're working on educating our families more as doulas so that they're aware, so that they can say, that's not something that I want, or that they can actually choose to have birth where interventions won't be used so readily. Okay, I hope that answered. Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, could you share how many of your patients, as well as a midwife, that you have saved people, Black women or women of color, from having cesareans opposed to being in the hospital?
Okay, so you're saying if they were at home instead of at the hospital? Saving them from cesarean birth. Ooh, now that's interesting because it's really difficult to say, because if they're having the baby at home, they have a successful vaginal delivery, it's hard to say if this exact scenario happened at the hospital, what would have happened. But I can say that there are some providers in the hospital who are really good at honoring a patient's desire for a vaginal birth. And there are also cases where maybe a cesarean is medically necessary. So we don't demonize the hospital, because it's important to understand that there are times where medical interventions are beneficial. We just have to be able to properly weigh the pros and cons. So, but I will say that there are some doctors who don't deliver breech. So if the baby is not with head down in a certain position and the baby is, bottom down or feet or arms, in those cases, some doctors are like, let's just do a cesarean. But then there are midwives who are trained in being able to actually rotate the baby. And there are a few doctors who are also trained in being able to rotate the baby. So it's important to understand how labor works and be able to interview your providers, because if you want to go with the hospital, you can ask, well, what are your cesarean rates, right? Like, are you trained in breech delivery? Are you trained in multiples? So sometimes you do go the hospital route, but you can ensure that you have the best possible experience within that. One more question. I think she had her.
Can we defer to him since you asked one, and then she can answer after we're done? Thank you.
Who are we deferring to?
Right here. Oh, and one right there. Wait, hold on.
What training do you have to be a doula?
A doula, so you can train, there's multiple organizations you can train with, depending on the style of doula that you want to be. There's DONA International that tends to be very well recognized. However, they don't necessarily teach you how to support Black clients, because there is a different, experience, So they might say things to like, oh, we never advocate for our client. Like, that's something DONA teaches. But if you go to like National Black Doula Association for a training, they'll say, if you need to save this woman's life, if you need to speak up, speak up. So depending on what you're going for, you can find a training for that and get certified. And then you have to complete a certain number of births and have the midwife or the doctor and the family sign off and say that you offered that service. And then other criteria, like all these books, like it's a whole process. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
I know you probably have some more questions, but I'm really trying to honor your time. And we started late, but it's after 4:30. I thank you all. All three of these people, these wonderful, wonderful people, will be here as we get ready to leave if you have some other questions for them. I'd like to turn the mic over to Reverend Dr. Patricia Coleman Burns for our final comments.
Did she tell you what her name was?
Reverend Stacy.
You know because you're on the committee.
Sue, what's my name? Sue knows my name. Teresa?
Thank you. This is my friend, Reverend Stancy Adams. Thank you very much. I always get it wrong. It's something about the Interfaith, the Detroit area Interfaith. You are the chair or something. The chair of the Interfaith Leadership Council. Amen. Is this great? First, I want to recognize our committee, with the committee that's still here. Please stand up and be acknowledged. Jack back in the back. Val, Evangelist Dr. Val. It is, these are some hard-working people. And I'm not very obedient because somebody told me, are you still telling that narrative? I want to recognize two women that I've been telling for 5 years now. The first Farmington area Juneteenth celebration in 2019, 6 weeks after my husband died, who had the vision. See, we're still telling it. Stand up. Mabel Fox, now Councilwoman Jackie Boulware. There are a lot of people in here, so I mean, everybody somebody came tonight. I appreciate that. I do have to recognize my superintendent, Daryl Toddy. Would you please stand up and be of the United Methodist Church? And of course, Catherine and Jack in the back, they're part of the committee. So many. Trustee of the Board of Education is here as well, Miss Angie Smith. I don't want to leave anyone out, but this is, you know, do you all get the connection between these three presentations? Did you all get it? Know who you are and whose you are. Understand your past and your history, and remember some things that were not meant for you can kill you. Some policies and practices that weren't meant for you can kill you, and some make you thrive. And so we want to invite all of you back tomorrow. Look, you all, we got to go and sleep real fast. We got bounce houses, we have face painting, we have food trucks, we have storytellers. We ran into a storyteller out there visiting. We visited 3 Juneteenth, 2-in-1 celebration yesterday. Found an author that has written a book she's going to come and read to our children in our pit. And the partnership between Narden Park has been absolutely phenomenal. You saw MCMR was here. It is a community. This is something that we do. You know, I was looking at John's vision tonight, and I'll let y'all go. But his vision was that as a united people, that we have so much more to give to each other. And if we come together, whether we go to Alabama together, when we are in fellowship, and that's what Dr. Nichols says, when we understand that some of us only know, I gotta know who your mama was before I can talk to you. I gotta know where you came from and who your people be. Those are your credentials. I don't do a background check. But understanding who our cultures are and how we've made it over 400 years should tell some folks something. Some folk something. And so I see her standing there.
One acknowledgement. And they're going to shoot me, so I'm not going to look directly at them. I won't look at them. Reverend Dr. Jimmy Wafer, who said to me when I was going through my master's degree, said, "Who taught you what you know and why?" And it started me on a journey, and I'd just like to acknowledge him and his bride, Reverend Dr. Wafer and Angela. They're also the pastor of Jean Derricott Murphy, and her husband is back there.
Wait, say that again. What did you just say?
He's her pastor.
Is that who you were saying your pastor was here? I didn't know who.
And that's her husband back there. I'm done.
All right. Because it takes a special man to deal with some of us women. Juneteenth tomorrow, we start at noon. My program manager, is there anything else I need to say, Dr. Irene? Come ready. If you want to, that's why I got to go rest, because we're going to learn how to hustle if you don't already know how to hustle. We got African aerobics and what's that other thing? Yoga.
Right. We've also got the pretty and precise steppers.
You all please come out to see the Warner Middle School Pretty and Precise Step Team. They're young kids. They need to see you all there to see them perform. And we have drummers, just a lot of people. So thank you very much. Anything else I missed, Irene?
Well, we have our jazz pianist, Charles Green, is coming.
See, jazz pianist.
We've got a lot. Just come.
Just come. Just come. It's so much, all in the wonderful, well, let me get my thing right, back there in the back. Please come. Bring your children and your children's children. See, I have grandchildren. Anything else? Catherine? Oh my God. We have so many vendors. Bring your money. Bring so
information
many
tables. We have some information tables from a wide variety of providers in the community, plus some people who will want to talk to you and you'll want to talk to them.
Thank you. There are people who are seeking elected positions, and we know that we are informed people, and we are an informed electorate. And so there's information on voter suppression and voter rights, the new laws that say for 9 days now, the polls are open. The Secretary of State will be here, her office will be here tomorrow. Health care, hearing, blood pressure, all kinds of things, information for your people. If your people are not here, look around and see who's here. If there's somebody that needs to be here that's not here now, tell them to be here tomorrow. We can't hold these things for our community, and the community doesn't get advantage from it. Bring the people out. I hear that Hill Harper and Alyssa Slockett will be here tomorrow, coming through. I hear a whole bunch, a lot of folks. Close us out in prayer. Let's pray. So I really like what my young people did. I'm talking about you, all of you. You go where you go. And if you don't have a place to go and find that center and core for you, find one right now. Because in the long haul, in the days when, imagine how for 400 people, 400 years of people sustained themselves. They had to go deep, deep. If you don't have that place you can readily go to, learn, find one. But for those of us who've been practicing for a little while now, you go there. I go to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's where I go. To my faith that brought my people from the bowels of Lisbon, Alabama, escaping Jim Crow, to come to the north, to find freedom for their children and their children's children, to be able to say, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last in our spirits and in our souls. To the one who can make us understand we are somebody, can remember that original experience of coming out of our mother's wombs, looking for life and seeking truth, loving the land, to that one who can bring us perfect to the throne of God. We say amen.